Alrighty, so we are recording now. Nice. Hello, and welcome back to another fabulous session of, I guess, just me talking. me talking a sequence of words that I see on a piece of paper. Well, on multiple pieces of paper that one might call a book. So yes, we are going to start reading again. I think I've only made, no, I think this should be the fourth video. Yeah, because there's one, two, three, four. So this would be the fourth video. I am halfway through the book. So that's pretty nuts. Pretty nuts. Because the book is like 346 pages and I'm on 175. So it is whack. Also, hold on. Alrighty. Well, I think we shall begin now. So, last we left off, I think it was Megan, one of the cheerleaders, was just like, hey, something's wrong with your sister. And Alexis is just like, no, there's not. You don't know anything. And she's been having weird stuff happening. Casey is definitely possessed. Alright, but now, yes, we go on. Let me just gauge how much I want to read tonight, because this chapter is fairly long. And let me see if... yeah, they're fairly long chapters now. Okay, we'll see if I can read this much. Okay. Alright, so here we go. Alright. So, Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Mrs. Ames ushered me back Mrs. Ames ushered me back to her office. You have a telephone call, she said, waving me to her desk chair. The receiver sat off the cradle. My father is dead. My mother is dead. Casey is dead. Hello? I said, surprised that I could formulate a proper word. Alexis, it's Mom. What happened? I braced myself for the worst. What? Nothing. What do you mean? Dad's okay? Oh, yes, sorry, she said, sounding only a fraction as apologetic as she should have for giving me such a scare. I sighed out the huge breath I had been holding. I talked to the police, she said. They made a mistake. The brakes weren't tampered with. They weren't? Yes, they went over the car just now. They're positive? Yes, they're definitely sure. Yes, they're definitely sure, she said. She drew in a slow breath. Alexis, I'm sorry about the way it looked last night. I had two options. One, tell her what Casey did and try to explain the whole sordid mess with Mrs. Ames breathing down my neck. Or two, let it Let it slide for now and explain later. I went with option 2. You know, last night wasn't what it looked like. Tell your mom about your ghost sister. I don't think she's gonna do that just yet. Where was I? Yeah, I went with option 2. You know, last night wasn't what it looked like. She sighed. I have a brother, Alexis. I know what siblings can be. I know that siblings can be a little rough. God damn, I can't talk. Maybe I should have had that margarita. Once I finish this water, I am going to get a margarita. Hopefully soon. Alright. She sighed. I have a brother. I have a brother, Alexis. I know that siblings can be a little too rough sometimes. I couldn't believe she had somehow rationalized it to herself that way. That she had convinced herself I was capable of hitting my sister in the face. It's a long story, I said, and I felt option 1 bubbling up inside me, dying to get out. You can tell me when I get home from work, Mom said. We have a few things to talk about, actually. Like shipping me off to a psychologist. And I don't think, and I don't see Casey as blameless. She's been kind of high maintenance lately, hasn't she? I shrugged. Not that she could see it. Are you still there? Yeah, but I have to get to class. I'm so sorry, Alexis. Yeah, well, I said. I'm glad about the breaks. Me too. Okay, Lex. I'll let you get going. Hey, wait. What? What? Did Casey go to school today? Mom paused. I think so. Was she sick? No, I'm sure she went. She keeps talking about this research she's doing. It's all she can think about. Research? But she said she'd try to go by the hospital this afternoon and see your father. Mom sighed. I made her promise not to break from her I made her promise to take a break from her project. What kind of project? I asked. I don't really know, Mom said. Something with genealogy, maybe? Did you have to do one of those? Yeah. I've never seen her so intense about schoolwork. Maybe. I've never seen her so intense about schoolwork. Maybe you two can go to the hospital together. Will you remind her? My mind was already swimming with thoughts of Casey and what this newest information meant. Okay, if I see her, I said. I'd better go. Bye. Bye, she said. I hung up before she had a chance to say anything else. Miss Ames sat quietly on the far side of the sofa, looking around the room curiously. A new perspective for her, I guess. Great news? Good news? She asked. Great, I answered. I couldn't force myself to sound cheerful. She stood up, giving me the look that means she knows I'm not a bad person, no matter what anybody else thinks. Off to class, then, she said gently. Sure thing, I said, scooping up my bag and walking out the door. When the final bell at the end of sixth period, yeah, when the final bell rang at the end of sixth period, dread washed over me. I sat at my desk for an extra 10 minutes, pretending to be organizing my notes, but finally the teacher stood up and grabbed her purse. Where was I supposed to go now? My first priority was, of course, to avoid Megan. My second was to avoid having to go alone. Uh, my second was to avoid having to go home and face my mother or sister. My third, and this might win for second if the circumstances were right, was to find Carter. Megan was waiting by my locker. No. Uh, God, my back is just like. Okay. Sorry. Uh, yeah, Megan wasn't waiting by my locker, thank God, but someone else was. Pepper Laird. I waited for her to say something about Mimi or Megan, and I racked my brain, trying to figure out what I could say to shut her down. But she spoke before I had a chance to. Did you know that Carter and I have been sort of on the verge of seeing each other for a while? She asked in a loud, clear voice. No, and to be honest, I didn't really care. The idea of them together wasn't upsetting to me because it seemed so completely impossible. Good for you, I said. Pepper twisted her six Pepper twisted her sweet 16 ring around and around her finger as we spoke. Nothing too serious, she said, but I thought for a while he might ask me to the dance. Maybe he will, I said. No, no, she said. She was being altogether too calm for my taste, talking in a really smooth voice, like we were business associates or something. No, you couldn't possibly think that, because he's taking you. Not your business, I said, slamming my locker shut and starting to walk away. Her voice got louder. I just thought you cared about him, she called. I turned around. You know, whether he has friends or not, maybe he fits in. Uh, hold on. Yeah, her voice got louder. I just thought you cared about him, she said. She called. I turned around. You know, whether he has friends or not, whether he fits in, she stared straight into my eyes. Whether he's happy, I shook my head. I have no idea where. My cousin was a senior at All Saints when Carter was there, she said, her voice hardly louder than a whisper. Oh. Then I said that all wrong. You know, whether he has friends or not, whether he fits in, uh, she stared straight into my eyes. Whether he's happy. I shook my head. I have no idea what you're. My cousin. My cousin was. Psst, 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 psst. What's happening? What's happening? Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Because I'm reading it wrong. Uh, okay, hold on. Hold on. There we go. It was getting a little bit too warm. Okay. I shook my head. I have no idea what year. My cousin was a senior at All Saints when Carter was there, she said, her voice hardly louder than a whisper. She told me what happened. I felt like a balloon that someone had let the air out of. Yeah, I felt like a balloon that someone had let the air out of. What are you? I took a step closer to you. I took a step. Yeah. What are you? I took a step closer to her. You know, nobody here knows about that. You wouldn't say anything. To Pepper's credit, she looked truly shocked at the idea. No! She cried. Hello, I have morals? Right. I felt the urge to roll my eyes. Then why are you saying this to me like you have some. Yeah, then why are you saying this to me like you have something hanging over Carter's head? Because you're the one with something hanging over his head, she said, her lips in an almost sneer. And since you're clearly too blind to see it, I thought I'd point it out. What do you think his life would be like if he started hanging out with you and your grotesque friends? I tried to imagine Carter interacting with the Doom Squad, but just couldn't form the mental picture. Then I thought of how nice it would have Then I thought of how nice it had been at the park, just the two of us. And then I pictured an endless string of days sitting at the park, just the two of us. It seemed a little monotonous, to be honest. Do you think they'd be nice to him? Wouldn't it be embarrassing watching him try to fit in? And then, if you ever break up, do you think his old friends will take him back? She frowned and leaned closer to me. Do you think he could handle being as completely alone as you are? Up close, Pepper's skin was a blanket of freckles, her eyes hazel pools that seemed to let light pass right through. Her eyelashes were so pale you could hardly see them. Excuse me. Yeah, her eyelashes were so pale you could hardly see them. I know how meaningless this must sound to someone like you, but I actually do care about Carter. She stepped back and arranged her bag over her shoulder. Do you? Was it possible that I'd become so much of a loner that I'd never be able to have a boyfriend without feeling smothered? What if I got in over my head and then discovered that I'd dragged Carter in over his head too? But by then it'd be too late. I'd be over him and I'd be trapped. I watched Pepper walk all the way to the end of the hall and through the double doors. Of all the many thoughts that sprang into my head about her, this was the one that got my attention. She was right. It was one of those perfect fall afternoons where people can't stop telling each other what a beautiful day it was. Beautiful day. the crossing guard said helpfully. The sky stretched huge and dark blue and seemed to press down on the edges of the earth. It was warm in sunlight, but a cool hint of breeze shook the leaves on the trees. Yeah, shook the leaves on the trees. They shimmied and quaked and reminded me of that dance move called jazz hands, where you stretch out your hands and wiggle your fingers. I forced myself to stop thinking about Carter and focused on Casey instead. Possessed. That had to be, like, the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. I mean, how ridiculous was it to assume that just because Casey was acting a little crazy, doing a few weird things, that she was actually possessed? But and anyway, Dad's brake wires hadn't been cut. That was big because it proved that Casey didn't do it, and that it was really important because and that was really important because not trying to kill someone ranked a lot lower on the psycho scale than trying to kill someone. And that meant that Casey was maybe only slightly nutso instead of downright room worthy. Fuck, dude. All right. I slowly made my way toward Whitley Street. Excuses. Oh, sorry. I cannot read. For whatever reason, I just get fucking. I don't know. My brain isn't working. And now my throat is being fucky too. It's not the Rona, I swear. Hold on. Okay. I think I'm good. Hopefully, I am good. Man, because it'd suck if I wasn't. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah. I slowly made my way toward Whitley Street. Excuses for my sister's behavior together in my head. By the time I reached the house, I practically had it all rationalized as a figment of my imagination. But I still felt a spike of dread in my spine as I put my key to the deadbolt. The front hall was quiet. The whole place was quiet. Surrey Middle didn't let out Surrey Middle didn't let out until 3:15 p.m. and it was only 3. So, according to my fresh optimistic outlook, I wouldn't see my sister for a half hour or so. Which gave me time to snoop around her bedroom. Casey did steal those reports. That was worth looking into, right? First, I went to the kitchen, pulled out the phone book, and called the main office at Surrey Middle School. When the secretary answered, I put on my best adult voice. Hello? I said. I'd like to see if one of your students was absent today. I'm sorry, the woman replied. We only released that information to family. Oh, I said in my normal voice. Well, it's my sister. What's the name? Casey Warren. A pause, the clicking of keys on a keyboard. Your sister is listed as present. Great, thanks. I hung up and climbed the stairs, feeling even better. God damn it, it's happening again. Yeah, I hung up and climbed the stairs, feeling even better. Oh my god, it's so annoying. God, and it's just like a piece of phlegm, probably, or something. I don't know. Okay, I just need to keep on drinking water or margarita, and it should be fine. Okay, yeah, I hung up and climbed the stairs, feeling even better. I set my stuff down outside my door. Yeah, I set my stuff down outside my door and hovered for a moment outside Casey's bedroom. Stop being a wimp, I said out loud. The voice, the sound of my voice gave me a burst of courage. I put my hand, I put my hand on the knob and turned, pushing the door open and stepping inside in one motion. Casey was sitting on her bed, looking out the window. Fear flooded over me when I saw her, and I was about to say something in my own defense when I suddenly realized she hadn't even turned around. I stood very still and watched her. Her eyes were wide open, and she sat with her legs crossed, her long hair pulled back with berets, her fuzzy peach sweater glowing in the sun. She didn't seem to see or hear me at all. I cleared my throat. Nothing. Case? I whispered. She didn't move. Fear seized me so fiercely that tears sprang into my eyes. I took a step backward toward the hall. Why are you leaving? Her voice was flat, cold. I stopped. My fist curled so tightly that my fingernails dug into my palm. I just wanted to see if you were home, I said. But the secretary told you I was in school, didn't she? Tell me about it. I thought I heard something, I said. You're lying. Casey, I said. What exactly are you doing? She still didn't look at me. I'm thinking, she answered. About what? About some about something someone offered me. Who? She didn't answer. Do you mean drugs? I found myself hoping it was that easy, but with every silent second that passed, I waited for an answer. I had punched her. Damn. I wouldn't do that, but I definitely run. With all the other shit that Lex has been going through, I would definitely be running. I'm punching her out the window. That is true. She seems like a very scary child. I wouldn't want to mess with her. Well, I wouldn't want to mess with possessed her. Imagine if we did like a haunted campaign, Chandler. That'd be cool. Ooh, yeah, we should try it out once we're done with all the other campaign stuff that we have to do. But that'd be cool. But yeah, so yeah. Do you mean drugs? I found myself hoping it was that easy, but with every silent second that passed, I waited for an answer. My highly precarious sunny outlook grew cloudier. You don't have any friends, Casey said, as if the thought had just occurred to her. Or let me say it again. Is it drugs? Please let it be drugs. Yeah, that's basically what she's like thinking right now. Please. Yeah. You don't have any friends, Casey said, as if the thought had just occurred to her. I have a few. I don't have any friends either. She turned away from the window and her eyes searched the shelves of dolls. I do now, though, Lexi, she said. I have a new friend. She says I'm special. I moved a halting step closer to the bed. To the bed. I've always been your friend, Casey. I moved forward and put my hand on her shoulder, but she yanked her body away as if I'd burned her. Don't touch me! She cried. I didn't want her to see my trembling hands, so I stuffed them into my pockets. Who is she, Casey? I asked. Where did you meet her? She looked at me for the first time, her face in shadow. All I could see of her eyes was the light glinting off them from the window. Did I even want to know what color they were? Suddenly, my sister was off the bed and right in front of me, holding onto my forearm so tightly that the skin around her fingers was turning white. I don't know what to do, she said. Her voice was small and scared. I'll help you, I said. Casey, maybe your new friend isn't nice. Maybe it's not a good idea to take whatever she's offering. But you don't understand, she said. When I do what she tells me to, it's like magic. Nothing is scary. Even if people are mean to me, I don't care. And everyone does what I say. Magic. My heart sank back in my chest. What do you mean they do what you say? My baby sister was possessed. She seemed to have forgotten what she was holding. No, yeah, she seemed to have forgotten that she was holding my arm. The pressure slowly increased as she spoke. I mean, I can tell people things and they just want to listen to me. They believe me. Like the attendance lady at school. I called Lexi and I told her to mark me as present, and she did. Ghost grip! Yeah, I mean, I can tell people things and they just want to listen to me. They believe me. Like the attendance lady at school. I called Lexi and I told her to mark me as present, and she did. Who who else have you done that to? Officer Dunbar, she said. Oh no. I went to talk to him this morning about the car, she said. I told him he was wrong. What he wrote on that note, what he wrote on that form about the brakes, so he changed it. Oh, Casey, I said. She let go of my arm and went back to the window. There were no cuts or burns this time. Ghost mind control. Oh yeah. This ghost's powers are pretty insane. They're like top tier. Yeah, there were no cuts or burns this time. I did it for you, Alexis. They were going to arrest you. So, it was true? The brakes? The attempted murder threat this morning? She was going to somehow pin the whole thing on me? Casey ducked her head and turned away. No. Oh no, Casey, please, I said. It wasn't me, Alexis, she said. I didn't cut the brake wires. But you know who did? She raised her hand to her mouth and started nibbling on her fingernails, then shrugged. Casey, Dad could have been killed. I know, she said. But that was an accident. It was just supposed to be a joke. But you didn't do it? She shook her head emphatically. Then, who did? My friend? None of this made sense. I felt like I was talking to the Cheshire Cat. Case, who is this person? My sister's voice went squeaky, and she covered her face with her hands as if she was embarrassed. She's just someone I met. Can I meet her? Her fingers fell away from her face. Maybe. A puzzled frown pressed her lips into a pout. I mean, maybe you already have. I don't understand, I said. But I was beginning to. In the hallway the other day, with the dirty socks. Casey, I said, do you remember coming into my room last night? She flushed pink. Yeah, she said in a tiny voice. How'd you get that bruise on your face? She looked her. Now her eyes flashed, and she raised her chin defiantly. You threw a book at me. No, I said. That's not what happened. She started chewing on her fingernails again. You don't remember, I said, because it was your friend in my room, and it was your friend in the hallway with the dirty socks, and stealing the reports from school, right? I guess, Casey said slowly. Listen to me, I said. You got that bruise because you hit yourself in the face. You're lying, she cried. I'd never take off my rings. Yeah, I never take off my rings. Yeah. Yeah, I never take off my rings, I said, holding up my hands so she could see them. Ghost slap. Yeah. I never take off my rings, I said, holding up my hand so she could see them. If I had hit you, you would have scratches on your face. She touched her face and her fingers traced the smooth skin of the bruise. Case, there is no friend. A thought dawned on me. You have, like, multiple personalities. You just need to see a doctor and get some pills or something. She walked over to the window and put the palms of her hands flat against the glass. I know you're lonely, I said, but I'll be your friend. Not that schizophrenia was so great, but at least it was a medical condition. It had symptoms and a diagnosis and treatments. She rested her head against the glass, then backed away from the window and turned to me. You fool, she said. Her voice was low and hard and angry. You cannot chase me away. I like it here. Then she dashed toward me, lifted her hand, and gave me a shove that sent me flying across the room. I crashed into Casey's dresser and fell to the floor. Ghost dash. Ghost shove. Ghost smash. Very nice. Okay. Yeah, then she dashed toward me, lifted her hand, and gave me a shove that sent me flying across the room. I crashed into Casey's dresser and fell to the floor, the air completely knocked out of my lungs. Her strength wasn't the strength of an angry 13-year-old. It wasn't human. That was impossible. Casey, I croaked. You are just jealous. She snapped. Her voice grew thin and rasping. Ghost strength. Yeah, her voice grew thin and rasping. I looked up into her burning green eyes. I want to talk, Casey, I said, trying to remember something, anything from the TV movies I'd seen about people with split personalities. I want to talk to my sister. I know she's still here. You do not know anything. But she turned away and rubbed her eyes with her balled up hands. Her shoulders slumped and her face relaxed into its usual pout. Casey was back. Lexi, why are you down there? I stared up at her, unable to stop my body from shying closer to the floor. You pushed me. No, I didn't. Was it possible that she really didn't remember? Your friend pushed me. She looked around the room like I'd been talking to a real person. Then her eyes got a faraway look. Oh, she said. Who is she? I asked. What is she? Casey hugged herself tightly and turned away. Please, I begged, make her leave us alone. I saw the jaws in Casey's jaw clench up, then relax, then clench up again. Just tell her to go away, I said. She's your friend, right? She'll do what you want? She thought about it for a few seconds. Fuck off, ghost. Be gone. Yeah, she thought about it for a few seconds. Then she lifted a hand and studied her fingernails. I like it, I like it, Lexi, she said. She liked it? Like messing with brake wires and stealing things from school and pushing people so hard they flew across the room? But, my voice wavered. I'm still your sister, right? She shrugged. Yeah. So can we what? I didn't know. If only there had been a poster in the clinic. How to tell if your sibling is possessed by the devil or just completely mental. I was scared out of my mind and trying to keep her talking. Keep her with me. Don't worry, Lexi. I haven't made up my mind yet. I have until midnight tomorrow. Casey, I promise I will be your best friend. I will do whatever you want. That's not friendship. Yeah, that's not friendship, she said, her mouth pulled into a tight frown. Friendship isn't just about doing what the other person says. Oh, sure, now she finds backbone. But isn't she telling you what to do? She shook her head vigorously. Not all the time. Sometimes she listens to my ideas. I really didn't want to know, but I had to ask. The thing with the car. Whose idea was it? Should have punted her out the window. Should have, yeah. Yeah. The thing with the car. Whose idea was that? Her blue eyes narrowed and there was a hard glint in them. I told you. She cut the brakes. But it was my idea to talk to the police. That was a good sign, right? That meant Casey still cared on some level. Lexi, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm not even asking for your opinion. Clearly not. I just thought you deserved an explanation. Case, what if we talk to Mom about this? Don't. But Mom and Dad probably wouldn't want you to. No. No. Let me say that again. I didn't like that second no. But Mom and Dad probably wouldn't want you to. No. Tears splashed onto my cheeks. What am I supposed to do? She cocked her head to the side. Live your life, Alexis. Her eyes suddenly flashed from blue to green, a vivid emerald that seemed to burn right into me. Your pathetic, lonely life. Then she grabbed her school bag and walked out, leaving me alone on the floor. The front door slammed shut, and I collapsed, laying my head down on the carpet, crying tears of rage, fear, and helplessness. After a few minutes of intense self-pity, I forced myself to stand. I grabbed my sweatshirt and my house key and stumbled down the stairs, ignoring the sharp ache where my shoulder blade had made contact with the edge of Casey's dresser. Wait, hold on. I was not paying attention to anything I just read. But yeah, the front door slammed shut, and I collapsed, laying my head down on the carpet, crying tears of rage and fear and helplessness. After a few minutes of intense self-pity, I forced myself to stand. I grabbed my sweatshirt and my house key and stumbled down the stairs, ignoring the sharp ache where my shoulder blade had made contact with the edge of Casey's dresser. The afternoon sun was blinding after the muted light of our dark house. I stepped out onto the front porch and looked around for my sister. Midnight tomorrow. As my eyes adjusted and the world faded into view, as my eyes adjusted and the world faded into view again, my heart sank. She was long gone. There was only one option left. I had to find Megan. And that is the end of that chapter. We will go on to the next chapter, which is called... Chapter 7. I mean, not chapters. Chapter 17. Actually, wait. Hold on. Alright. So, yes. So, yeah. Chapter 17. The football field was empty. Hold on. Okay, so yeah. Chapter 17. The football field was empty when I arrived back at school, and something inside of me deflated. All my courage had been used up during my confrontation with Casey, and now I was alone and scared. I sat down on the lowest bleacher and stared at my hands. "Keep going," said the voice in my head. "Go to her. Find her." But I just couldn't. The longer I sat there, the more powerless I felt. Possessed or not, Casey had almost killed our dad. With every passing minute, she fell deeper under the power of whatever it was that was controlling her. Whatever it was that was controlling her. I heard chattering female voices and knew it was my last chance to get out of there before I was in it for real. I would have to face Megan, take whatever she dished out, and then grovel for her help, possibly in front of the entire Surrey High cheer squad. Did I have a choice? I could go home, break into the emergency cash jar, put some clothes in a backpack, and hit the road. Run away and leave the whole mess behind me. There would be plenty of room on the open road for new, smaller messes. But it was too late to run away. What's she doing here? I recognized Pepper Laird's voice, and the talking stopped short. I looked up. There they stood, toned, tanned, and all set to do high kicks and catchy chants. One thing was wrong with the picture, and I was it. If looks could kill, I could have been a charred pile of ex-Alexis on the bleacher seat. As, like a swan gliding through lily pads, Megan sailed to the front of the pack and stared down at me. Her eyes were cool, emotionless. They had none of the passion that I'd seen in them earlier when she offered her help. I'd waited too long. "Don't worry, Megan, we'll get rid of her," Pepper said. "I'm calling security," someone else said. 4 cell phones flipped open. But Megan simply looked at me, and I looked at her. 5 seconds passed. 10. No one said a word. Finally, Megan took a deep breath. "Pepper," she said, "please start the warm-up without me." Pepper stared in confusion for a moment and then obediently clapped her hands together 3 times. All right, she called. 2 laps, let's go! And the cheerleaders, Pepper included, took off in 2 neat lines down the track. Megan stayed. She crossed her arms in front of me. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and watched me. It sounds silly to say, but seeing her standing there, I completely understood why she was so popular. There was something about her that was regal, composed. She was one of those people who never let you see them sweat. I had a vision of throwing myself at her feet, begging her forgiveness. And that was probably what it would take. I stood up. I told you it would get bad, she said. Fair enough. Megan, I'm sorry. No, Alexis. Don't apologize. I closed my mouth. I get why you hate us. What they did to Beth Goldberg sucked, okay? But if we're going to do this together, you have to trust me. I shook my head in confusion, but Megan mistook it for a rejection. I never said anything, because it sounds like I'm making excuses. But I was in Ireland with my grandmother when they put that presentation together. I wouldn't have let them do it. She swallowed hard. I swear, Alexis, on my mom's grave. I did not want to talk about graves and mothers. You don't have to forgive me, but you have to believe me that I'm not messing with you. She had her arms folded in front of her, hands gripping her elbows. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look not perfect, not in control. I believed her. Something horrible is going on with my sister, I said, and I'm not 100% sure, but there's a chance you're right. Or maybe she just might be, or maybe she might just be completely psycho. Psycho how? Like hearing voices, I said? Multiple personalities, doing crazy stuff, only... She waited for me to finish. Only super strength isn't really a symptom of a mental disorder, is it? Megan shook her head. Sorry to disappoint you, but no. My head started to ache. And, like, amazing powers of persuasion. She reached out and put her hand on my arm. Trust your instinct. Trust your instinct, Alexis. I swallowed hard. I swallowed hard, looking at her perfectly polished red fingernails. Her voice was gentle. What do you really think? What did I think? I think she's possessed. I'll help you, Megan said immediately. She grabbed my arm and started walking toward the parking lot. I want to know everything that's happened, she said, and we need to go to your house. Whatever it is, it's probably there. I looked up at the squad, almost done with their first lap. Don't you have to tell someone you're leaving? They're smart girls, she said, not stopping. They'll figure it out. A sarcastic reply made it all the way to the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed it right before it slipped out. I grabbed my sweatshirt and hurried to catch up. So what happened? Megan asked. She cut the brake wires in my mom's car, I said. Might as well lay all the cards on the table. Might as well lay all the cards on the table. She was going to frame me for it, but somehow she convinced the police it was an accident, and she had some weird plan. She said something about midnight tomorrow. Megan led me to an ivory Volkswagen New Beetle. She was the only sophomore I knew who had her own car. I glanced back at the entrance to the school. The double door began to open. Carter walked out. "Hold on," I said. Carter saw us, did a double take, then waved and headed straight over. "Where have you been?" he asked. In spite of everything, I couldn't keep a tiny smile off my lips. Carter glanced at Megan questioningly, but didn't ask. Instead, he lowered his voice and looked right into my eyes. "Is everything okay?" I shook my head. "I'm sorry," he said, touching my wrist lightly. The brush of his fingers against my arm would have made me melt in my shoes if Megan hadn't been staring at us impatiently. "You guys are going to have to do this later," she said, flipping her cell phone open to check the time. Alexis and I have things to do." Carter looked bewildered. "Where are you going? I'll come." "No, you can't," I said, pulling my wrist away from him. "You really can't," Megan said, turning toward the car. "Sorry. Come on, Alexis, let's go." There wasn't time to explain the whole situation. My heart ached. I longed to be wrapped in his arms again, pour out my troubles, make everything feel okay, even if it wasn't. "Call me," Carter said, reluctantly, taking a half step back. "I will," I said. "I'm sorry." "Get in," Megan ordered from the driver's seat. I sat down in the passenger seat and let my bag slip onto the floor. To the floor as Carter walked away. I guess I sighed kind of melodramatically or something, because Megan gave me a sideways eye roll as she backed out of the parking space. I noticed how delicately slender his hands moved. I noticed how delicately her slender hands moved the gear shift, the way her fingers grasped the steering wheel, and I felt like a clumsy, galumphing oaf. As we drove away from the school, I glanced back to see Carter's car pull out of the parking lot and turn in the other direction. "How long have you two been?" Megan said. "What? We're not. Nothing's going on." "The way he was looking at you, that's definitely something." I guess Pepper thinks so too. I couldn't help saying. "Pepper? She likes him? But he doesn't seem to be into her." "Yeah, Pepper? She likes him? But she doesn't seem to be into her. She came to my locker and had a talk with me." "What did she say?" I recalled the dejected look on Carter's face, and Pepper's words came back to me. Already I was bringing him down, hurting his feelings, leaving him on his own. "Nothing." "Right," Megan said, "because Pepper is famous for saying nothing." I didn't respond. "Now tell me everything," she said. "How long has the weird stuff been happening?" "Since Tuesday night," I said. And it is just your sister?" "Interesting question. Dad was safely tucked away in the hospital. Well, perhaps safely wasn't the right word. And Mom, sure, she was distant and detached, but that was just Mom being Mom." "Yeah, just Casey," I said. "Now, skip to the part about me. I'll spare you the gory details, but it wasn't too long into my little story that Megan had to pull the car over to the side of the road so she could devote all of her attention to staring at me in indignant, Let me say this again. Yeah, I'll spare you the gory details, but it wasn't long into my little story that Megan had to pull the car over to the side of the road so she could devote all her attention to staring at me in indignant disbelief. When I reached the part about Casey showing up at school that morning, I hesitated. Megan was glaring at me so fiercely that I couldn't concentrate. If I'd known this was going to happen, I never would have. She raised a finger in the air and closed her eyes. I took it as a very clear way of saying, "Leave me alone for a minute, or I will push you out of my car." A few seconds and some deep breaths later, she said, "Okay, Alexis," she began. "I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about being cast as an evil villain in your stupid little fairy tale." "Megan, I didn't know. Quiet," she said. "Let's just put the past behind us and not worry about it." She exhaled. "For now." She put the driver, she put the car in drive and pulled back onto the road, shaking her head. "Well, it's convenient," I said at last. "What is?" If it hadn't, if it had been about somebody who didn't believe in ghosts," I said, but I didn't know how to finish. A sour, empty, a sour, empty ache growled to life in my stomach. My arms felt weak and I closed my eyes. "So, what changed your mind? Why did you suddenly decide you needed my help?" "Oh, God," I said. I hadn't even talked about what had happened at the house. Casey's evil hoodoo. So I told her. As the story went on, I felt more and more ridiculous. My 13-year-old sister cops an attitude, and I run for cover. I waited to hear what Megan would say. "Tomorrow at midnight." "What's Friday? Is it an important date? Her birthday or something?" "No." She drummed her fingers on the steering wheel. "It's cool that you kept her talking. You never know what she might have done otherwise." I hadn't thought about it that way. The weak place in me felt a little stronger. For the first time since we had gotten into the car, I wondered where we were going. We were driving past the new developments where houses as big as museums were being constructed on lots so small that they hardly had space for a front or backyard. Dad makes Dad makes faces and calls them McMansions. Mom keeps quiet, which I assume means she wouldn't mind living in one someday. "We're going to my house," Megan said. "I need to change out of my cheerleading clothes." "Okay," I said. "Listen, my grandmother might be home. If you say even a single word about this to her, I'll be grounded until college." "All right," I said, instantly certain that I would somehow slip and ruin everything. "Hi, nice to meet you. Your granddaughter and I are just going to mess with the dark side for a while. I love those flowers. Are they violets?" "She doesn't believe in it." "That's the problem," Megan said. "She does believe. Very much. So she tries to keep me away from it. But she knows you're inter- but y- but she knows you're interested, right?" "Yeah." "How did you start believing in the first place?" Interest in the paranormal wasn't really the in thing at Surrey High. It's not the kind of thing you'd chat about during lunch. Megan turned down the radio. "Do you believe in angels?" "Huh?" Uh, "I'm not sure," I said. "Does anyone?" Yeah, a lot of people do. And once you believe in good things, it's not that hard to believe in bad things. So you believe in angels? Yeah, she shrugged. I mean, not the harps and feathers kind. But I know something happens to good people when they die. Her cheery tone thinned. People like my mom. I was desperate to turn the conversation away from Megan's mother. So I said, "How long have you lived with your grandmother?" Which, as a changing the subject tactic, was a complete failure. It was just another way of calling attention to the fact that Megan's mom was dead. Way to go, Alexis. Since I was 2 years old. She glanced at me. It's okay. I can talk about her. My dad was never even in the picture. Somewhere out there is a man who has no idea he has a daughter. Although, from what Grandma says about him, he probably has more than one. And I thought, my dad. Yeah, and I thought my dad was absentee. I don't even remember my mom, she said. Not really. Every once in a while I feel like I do, but then I think it's probably just a Sesame Street flashback. Do you have aunts or uncles? I asked. Nope, Megan said, shaking her head slowly. Just me and my grandma. I didn't even know that, I said, trying to figure out how you could be in school with someone for so long and not know such a huge thing about them. Well, it's not like you ever tried to get to know me. Ouch. The sting of truth. So, bottom line, if she suspects that I'm trying to have anything to do with ghosts or spirits, she'll ship me off to boarding school and I'll end up in a covenant. In a convent? Convent? I don't think I've heard that word. I know there's covenant, but not what's convent. Oh yeah, so it's just a Christian community under monastic vows, especially yeah. Oh, okay. Then what's a covenant? Is that witches? Covenant. Covenant. Oh. Oh. I always thought it was like, I don't know. I see, I see. Oh, okay. I think I got the two mixed up. Or I thought, yeah. Okay. I got it. I got it now. Alright, yeah. So, bottom line, if she suspects that I'm trying to have any. They do. That's why they're so similar. Convent, and coven. Ah, yeah. So, that makes it all the more confusing. Thank you for clearing that up. But yeah. So, bottom line, if she suspects that I'm trying to have anything to do with ghosts or spirits, she'll ship me off to boarding school and I'll end up in a convent. If she's so strict about it, why are you doing it? I'm sorry, Alexis. Yeah, I'm sorry, Alexis. Yeah, I'm sorry, Alexis, she said. I didn't realize you were the only person on the planet allowed to think for yourself. Then she shrugged again and cocked her head to one side. Besides, besides that, your little sister seems to be fixated on me. I have my reasons. And that is the end of that chapter. Now we will go on to the next chapter. Actually, I will be right back for a pee break and maybe a margarita. So I will just mute this. For the YouTube people listening, it might take about I want to say like 2 to 4 minutes. So if you want to skip past that, or just wait until this thing starts, acting up again, go ahead. You can skip through that. I don't care. Okay, we're back. All right, I am back. Hold on another second. Sorry. Sorry. I'm gonna take like maybe 5 more minutes. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. Uh, I just needed to just take a little break. But I am back. Alright, so now we're on to chapter 18. 18. So, yes, chapter 18. We rode in silence until we reached a large beige house with lots of clean white trim. Megan pulled into the driveway next to an enormous silver BMW. She's home, Megan said, staring at the front door, Megan said, staring at the front door the way a gladiator might watch the gate the lions come running out of. You'll have to distract her while I get some things for my room. Inside, Megan led me down a hallway that spilled out into a huge, sunny living room. To our left was a spacious kitchen, where a woman in her 60s stood at the counter, leafing through a pile of mail. Megan? Yeah, Megan, the woman said, looking up at us in surprise. What are you doing home? Don't you have practice? Her gaze lingered on my hair, but she didn't say anything. Yes, Megan said, which wasn't technically a lie. Just changing and grabbing a few things for the float, Grandma. This is Alexis. Alexis, this is my grandmother, Mrs. Wiley. Mrs. Wiley, indeed. This was not the grandmother I had been preparing myself for. Instead of a sweet, frumpy house dress, she wore a sleek burgundy suit that I instinctively knew was more expensive than about 5 of my mother's suits put together. I'll be right back, Megan said, giving me a pointed look and dashing up the stairs. Mrs. Wiley gave me a once-over. Are you on the squad? Yeah, are you on the squad? She asked. She reminded me of the stepmother in Cinderella, except not mean, just cool, reserved. I could see where Megan got it. No, I said. Oh, lie, you idiot. Mrs. Wiley waited for an explanation. Her salon-groomed eyebrows pressing closer together. I felt like a piece of art being studied at a museum, or more likely, in Mrs. Wiley's case, a small company about to be gobbled up by a huge corporation. I groped in the back of my mind for something to say. I'm doing a photo shoot for the school newspaper. Ah, a photographer, she said. I waited for a photographer, she said. I waited for a suspicious reaction, but she didn't seem interested in providing one. I could have died of relief. I dabble, I said, mentally willing her not to ask me about the school paper. I didn't even know if they had photographers. When I looked at her to see how she would reply to this, her eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on the window over the sink, or rather, somewhere in the distance. Megan's mother was a photographer, she said. A good one. She used to win contests. Then a tremor seemed to move through her body, and she looked down at the mail on the counter. I didn't know that, I said. It was the only thing I could think of to say. Do you want to study photojournalism? Yeah, do you want to study photojournalism in college? Back to photography. Not really, I said. My stuff is more artistic. But not pretentious, I added quickly. I do dislike pretension, Mrs. Wiley mused, tearing open an envelope. I wish Megan would have taken up an interest in something like photography. She's a really good cheerleader. She could probably even get a scholarship. Grandma tuttered uh, under her breath. And spend college partying and dating football players? It's not the scholarship. I just wish she would use her mind instead of her muscles. I was surprised to feel the urge to defend Megan spring up inside me. I didn't even know what I would say, except that I'd seen her countless times walking around school with her eyes glued to her black cheerleading notebook. As much as I disliked the whole idea of shaking pom-poms and hopping around in short skirts, it didn't seem fair to say that Megan wasn't good or that she didn't work hard at it. That thought took a second to settle in, and I brushed it away before I had time to feel like a huge hypocrite for everything I'd ever thought or said about Megan. The kitchen was mercifully quiet for a minute, and for a minute or two, I gazed around the room, trying to look mesmerized by the island. Oh, yeah, the kitchen was mercifully quiet for a minute or two. I gazed around the room, trying to look mesmerized by the iron candelabra on the counter. But just when I was feeling confident that the hard part of my job was over, Mrs. Wiley spoke again. Are you going to the dance Friday night? She asked. Yeah, I said, immediately regretting it. If I had just given her a simple no and acted dejected, she would have left the subject alone. Do you have a date? I guess that's kind of what it is, I answered. What does your dress look like? My dress? I tried to picture a dress in my head, but all I could think of was the pastel Easter dresses Casey and I had worn as little girls. Somehow, baby blue with puffy sleeves and chicks embroidered on the front didn't seem to cut it for homecoming. I guess I don't have one yet, I said. It's getting late, Mrs. Wiley said, sounding a little concerned. Then she perked up. You should borrow some of Megan's. Yeah, you should borrow some of Megan's. I don't think your clothes would fit me. Yes, they would, she said, giving me a decisive up and down glance. You're the same size. You're taller than she is, but that shouldn't matter. She smiled kindly and went back to the mail. I felt a slow flush spread up to the side. Yeah, she smiled kindly at me and went back to the mail. I felt a slow flush spread up the sides of my face. No way could she think someone like me could even be friends with Megan, much less fit into her clothes. I was so different. Megan was perfect and I was not perfect. Megan was skinny and fit and I was plenty skinny, but since I didn't work out, it didn't seem possible that we could wear the same size. We could wear the same size anything. What could be keeping Megan? She asked. Why don't you run up to her room? First door on the right on the top of the at the top of the stairs. Okay, I said, hoping my relief wasn't too apparent. Mrs. Wiley was nice, but if she pressed for any more information, a simple question about earrings or footwear, I would blow the whole operation. I bolted up the stairs and knocked on the first door on the right. Megan opened it and looked at me in surprise. What about my grandmother? She asked. It was her idea, I whispered. I slid through the door and Megan eased it shut behind me. Then she walked over to the bed and got down on her hands and knees, digging around behind the dust ruffle. Do you need help? I asked. No, she said, her voice muffled. I'm almost done. I leaned against the door, part of me still shocked that I was standing in Megan Wiley's bedroom. I can't say I was expect I can't say I what I was expecting, but her room didn't look like a stereotypical cheerleader's room. There was some evidence that a pom pom there was some evidence that a pom pom pusher lived there, but it was minimal, mostly confined to one shelf of the bookcase. The rest of her stuff was just as eclectic, or yeah, the rest of her stuff was just an eclectic mix of books and knickknacks. It was kind of cluttered, but not in the way that drives me crazy, like Casey's room. It was clutter with a purpose, like one of those expensive designer furniture stores in the mall. It made me think of a professor's study, only instead of maps and journals, there were embroidered pillows and polished stone sculptures. I noticed, yeah, yeah, not everyone is not, a certain way. They also have background. They're not stereotypical. Hmm. But yes, um, yeah, and yeah, it made me think of a professor's study. Only instead of maps and journals, there were embroidered pillows and polished stone sculptures. I noticed a black and white photo in a silver frame hanging on the wall near the closet. It was of it was of a very young Megan and a younger Mrs. Wiley sitting on a flat rock in front of a lake. Did your mom take that? I asked. Megan pulled her head from underneath the bed and stared at me. What are you talking about? I pointed to the picture. That photograph. Megan stared at the photo for a moment. Why? I doubt it. It's just something I've always had. She took a, she took a step forward, looking at the image, her own tiny face staring seriously at the camera, and Mrs. Wiley, smiling and elegant in her picnic dress. It was almost like Megan had never really looked at it before. I like it, I said. It's really good. But why would you ask that? She said, looking back at me. If my mother took it. Because you're. I didn't know what to say. Because your grandmother said your mom was a photographer. The corners of Megan's eyes crinkled. She told you that? I nodded cautiously. Maybe Megan considered these little pieces of information private, secret. But she didn't seem angry, just puzzled. She told you something about my mother. Something she never told me. Her voice was calm, but kind of too calm. The way a person talks when they're in shock. She pulled the frame off the bed, then placed it upside down on the. Yeah, She pulled the frame off the wall, then placed it upside down on the bed and pried the metal clips off, lifting the backing away. She gently picked up the photo by its edges. I stayed where I was. I'd done plenty already. I thought she was about to heat that Yeah. Yeah, right, man? Yeah. I stayed where I was. I'd done plenty already. She breathed out softly. Come look, she said, wonder in her voice. I went to her side and she pointed to a corner of the photo that had been hidden by the mat. Someone had signed it faintly in pencil with a first initial and their last name. Shara Wiley, Megan said. Is that? I studied the next word. Mom, Megan said. She shook her head and kind of sank onto the bed. Wow, I said. Megan set the photo down carefully on the frame and turned to me. My grandmother adopted me after the accident. She never talks about my mom. Never. She glanced back at the photo. They didn't get along well, and they weren't speaking when Mom died. I guess it was horrible for her. I'm sorry, I said. I couldn't finish the thought. I leaned in closer to look at the image. It was really a nice shot. Not too posed or phony, the way a lot of people's family portraits look. And Megan was a cute kid, with one eyebrow raised skeptically. Hey, hey, I said, noticing the bracelet hanging off her chubby toddler arm. It was one of those hearts that looked like it had been cut in half. I have a charm like that. Megan reached to her neck and pulled a gold chain out from under the sweatshirt she'd put on, revealing the dangling charm. I still wear it, she said. I think these things were pretty popular. It's really cool that your mom took this, I said, marveling that I'd never even thought to take a picture of my family. Thanks, Megan said, delicately placing the photo in the frame. I could tell by the tightness in her voice how meaningful this was for her. I guess there's time for this later. Right now we have more pressing issues. I'm really sorry, I repeated. Megan ignored my apology. Grandma said she was a photographer? I nodded. A good one. Award-winning, your grandma said. Wow, Megan said, and then her eyes lost their focus and she stared off in the distance. She hung the picture back in its corner and looked at it one last time. Then she glanced at me. You're into photography, right? Maybe sometime you could show me. Her voice trailed off. Are you kidding? I said. Of course. And I meant it. I mean it. I totally owed it to her. But more than that, I just got this subtle vibe from Megan that I didn't get from anybody else. That if I showed her my photos, she would understand. She would get them. The idea of having an intelligent conversation about photography was as oddly irresistible as the thought of listening to Carter insult my house with all his fancy architectural terms. Megan sighed. I guess we're ready to go, she said. Oh, I said. Your grandmother told me to ask you about dresses, so if she asks, just say we talked about it. What about dresses? Yeah, what about dresses? I hesitated. She said I should borrow one from you for the dance. You don't have a dress? I shrugged. It doesn't matter. You should take one, she said. Then she won't ask any questions. She went to her closet and pushed the doors open. I felt extraordinarily silly. Megan, I don't think any of your clothes. Chill, she said. Scanning, she Yeah, Megan, I don't think any of your clothes. Chill, she said, scanning the racks of clothes. It's just for show. You don't have to actually wear it, but you might as well. If I'm even alive for the dance. Yeah, if I'm even alive for the dance, I said, only half joking. She turned and looked at me solemnly. You will be, Alexis, she said. I promise we'll find a way to fix what's happening. I sighed. The fact that she took it to the fact that she took it seriously made it seem so much harder. Half of me wanted to half of me wanted someone to convince me half of me wanted someone to convince me that it was all in my head. Then then I could pop a magic pill and go back to my normal life. Except what was my normal life? Could I go back to hanging out with the Doom Squad? Could I go back to hating Megan? What are you gonna do with her hair? She asked, reaching toward the back of the rack. Have you thought about wearing it up? No, I said truthfully, because I hadn't thought about my hair at all. Okay, don't hate me for this, Megan said, and turning around and holding out a dress. A pink dress. When I say pink, I mean Pepto-Bismol pink, easy bake oven pink, beauty pageant pink. I took an involuntary step back, as if she were holding a snake. No way. Come on, it would be adorable. You'd look like a punk rock Barbie doll. No, I said. Megan, no. People would think, I thought you didn't care what people thought about you. Crud. I would look like a strawberry. Not even, she said. I'm telling you, it would be the cutest thing ever. I looked at the dress. It was kind of 1960s looking, with a neckline that went to a straight with a neckline that went in a straight line at the top of one shoulder to to the other, and no sleeves. It flared a couple of inches under the bust. Uh, excuse me. Yeah, it flared a couple it flared a couple inches under the bust into a puffy skirt that went down to about knee high. The fabric was kind of stiff, so it stuck out. Take it. You're taking it. You have to, she said. Everyone will die. Oh, great, I said. Just what I need. What? For people to think you're cute and have good fashion sense? That would be devastating. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, I know what's missing. Her eyes swept over the room, searching for something. Where's my tiara? I couldn't take it anymore. Fine, I said. I'll take the dress, but nothing else. No accessories. I'd only meant to make us safe. Yeah, I'd only meant to make us safe from her grandmother, and now I was being talked into wearing a pink princess dress. I hadn't worn pink clothing since 4th grade. We had to leave before she found the tiara. Yay, Megan crowed, and she draped it over my arm. She took one last look around the room. Are you going Friday night? The question kind of slipped out. Yeah, kind of have to. School spirit. Rah, rah, rah. Who are you going with? I asked. She shrugged. Myself? You don't have a date? Who needs a date? She asked. He'd just try to dance and look stupid anyway. Who's punk rock now? We didn't even pause as we walked by the kitchen. Megan picked up her school bag from the front hall and shouted over her shoulder, "Bye, Grandma! God keep you!" Uh, Mrs. Wiley called back as we walked out the door. "Why did she say that?" I asked. "Was she on to us?" Megan shrugged. "That's what she always says." And that is the end of that chapter. I think I'll just do one more because it feels like I only have time for one more. I could go for another one, but I'm not sure. Oh, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so yeah. Next chapter is called Chapter 19. So yes, Chapter 19. The afternoon light had begun to fade from pale white to gold, and the wind had picked up, sending whirlwinds of fallen leaves tumbling across the street. When we paused at stop signs, the leaves blew against the car and made faint scraping noises. "We'll go inside and look around a little," Megan said, drumming along to the song on the radio. "And then maybe we'll have something to work on. And then maybe we'll have something to work with." "Megan," I said, hesitated. She turned the radio down. "Yeah? I don't want this to sound weird, because you obviously know more about these things than I do, but my sister is seriously unpredictable right now. I don't think we should mess with her." She drove on, not looking at me, not saying a word. "It's just that it could get risky. I don't want you to get hurt." "I'm here of my own free will," she said. "Stop making up reasons to feel bad." She went on tapping lightly on the steering wheel, and I stared. Yo, these two should date. Yep. True. I like either, you know, her and Carter or her and Megan. I think those are the only ships that I approve. And Megan. Hey, yeah. That's an idea. Ah. 3TP? What is that? Oh, true pair? But three. Hell yeah. Alright. Yeah, she went on tapping lightly on the steering wheel. Oh my god. Yeah. I'm dumb. One true three. Yep. Well, not yep to you're dumb, but yeah, it's 3TP. But yeah. She went on lightly tapping on the steering wheel, and I stared out the front window of the car, trying to ignore the fear that hovered over my thoughts, like an approaching storm. Megan and I had reached a delicate balance, and I didn't want to upset that balance by second guessing her. Neither of us said a word as she turned onto Whitley Street. We parked across the front of my house. After turning the engine off, Megan gazed silently out the window, not moving, not even to take off her seatbelt. The air in the car seemed to settle, and the only sounds were our breathing and the scratching and skittering of the leaves outside. I glanced out. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. Yeah, I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She sat straight up, her body rigid with stillness, like a tiger crouching in the grass. The sudden change in her behavior frightened me. Are you okay? She asked. I didn't I didn't even notice her hand move, but her seatbelt clicked and went flying. Wait, hold on. There we go. Let me adjust myself because my butt is getting sore. Yeah, I didn't even notice her hand move, but her seatbelt clicked and went flying in violent release, scaring me out of my skin. I gave a shriek which seemed to wake her up. Her lips pulled tight in a grim little line, revealing tension she didn't want me to see. It was suddenly as if the house and whatever was inside of it were more than she'd bargained for. But if she wasn't going to admit it, I wasn't going to challenge her. Ready? She gulped in a breath of air and nodded resolutely. Let's go. The car doors unlocked with a soft click, and we stepped out onto the road. The wind hurried by us. The wind hurried by us, moaning softly. The perfect fall day was cooling into a chilly twilight, and the sky seemed to glow soft brown. I shivered involuntarily. Megan grabbed her bag from the trunk and faced the house. The dress? The dress? I asked. She shook her head. Leave it for now. I closed the trunk. The noise seemed to get lost in the wind. We must have looked like a solemn little procession staring up at the house as we crossed the street and went up the front walk. I volunteered for the front procession, and Megan followed a few steps behind me. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and hesitated for half a second before going inside. Is she here? Megan whispered. I don't know. Wow, Megan said. I turned to see what she was looking at, but she was just studying the foyer. I tried to see it the way she was. The high ceiling plastered with cherubs and angels, the the leaded glass window over the front door, the sweeping staircase opening. Yeah, the sweeping staircase opening in front of us, the ornate handrail with its carved roses and vines. Let's go upstairs, she said. As I reached the top of the steps and listened for sounds from Casey's room, I began to relax, although, as I learned earlier, it didn't have to sound like she was home to mean she was. The door was open. I edged closer. And sighed with relief. The room was empty. Even if Casey was home, she definitely wasn't in her bedroom. Megan came more slowly up the stairs, looking back at the foyer and peering down the hall. I feel like I've seen this place before, she said. There's one in like every scary movie, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Do you want to see my sister's room? I went alone into Casey's room while Megan hovered a few feet behind me. The longer we were in the house, the quieter and more withdrawn she seemed to get. Nothing struck me as out of the ordinary. I turned around to leave, but Megan wasn't there. She wandered down the hall and stood just at the top of the stairs, studying the wallpaper, dragging her fingertips across it. Hey, I said. Maybe we should go outside for a minute. She turned to look at me, but instead of answering, she went ghostly white and seemed to freeze in place, staring over my shoulder down the hallway. Not a good sign. Megan? She didn't answer, didn't even move. I took a step toward her. Wait, she said. An order. I obeyed, too afraid to even move my head or follow her gaze behind me. I stared at her, trying to read her expression. Nothing. Her face was blank. Sarah, she said. Sarah. Megan? Sarah. 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 Megan, what are you saying? After a moment, she seemed to wake up. Her eyes went wide and she shook her head furiously, but the name wouldn't stop coming out of her mouth. Her whole body was stiff. Her muscles so tense that the tendons showed in her arms. Sarah, 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 Sarah. Megan, I cried. Quit it! But she couldn't. It was like me in the basement with a story. I grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her hard. Megan, stop it! She stopped, blinking a few times. Finally, her gaze settled on me, and her glazed eyes seemed to clear. What happened here? Megan gasped. Why do you keep saying that name? In this house, Megan said. Something happened in this house. She collapsed. Down the hall, Casey's door slammed shut all by itself. Megan had fallen gracefully into a little heap in the corner. I knelt at her side and felt her wrist for a pulse. It was there, weak, but there. Come on, I said, shaking her shoulder gently. Wake up! Megan stared. Her eyelids fluttered open and then slid shut as if they were weighted. Her lips moved in an attempt to speak. Megan, come on, wake up. We have to get out of here. I grabbed her by both shoulders and pulled her up to a sitting position. She blinked. Let's go, she whispered, color flooding her pale cheeks. I helped her to her feet, and as we went down the steps, her hand gripped the banister as if it were a life preserver. What just happened? She asked, her voice shaking. I'll tell you outside, I said, holding her by the arm as we crossed the foyer and hurried out the house. While Megan rested against the side of her car, my eyes searched the house, looking for a strange light or movement. Casey's face in a window, but there was nothing. After a minute, Megan raised her head and looked at me. I'm okay, she said, trying the words out. I didn't ask if she was sure, but our eyes met and hers darted away. I am, she insisted. I waited for her to climb into the driver's seat before I walked around to the passenger side. Once we were safely in the car, she gripped the steering wheel in her hand and tightened her fists until the skin over her knuckles was white. She took a long, deep breath in and held it. Who's Sarah? I asked. The name seemed vaguely familiar to me, but I couldn't place it. What? Sarah, you just kept saying that name. Don't you remember? No, I really don't. All I remember is feeling something evil. She leaned back against the seat, staring intently at the steering wheel. You know how I keep saying I'm doing this for me? She hugged herself tightly. Ever since I was a little girl, whenever I was around people, fortune tellers, psychics, they're all afraid of me. Afraid how? I just walk by their tents and they come out and start yelling at me. Not the fake ones, but the real ones. The ones who aren't just making stuff up. I didn't want to ask what they yelled. They tell me, Sarah is here, and Sarah is angry, and Sarah hates you. And they're so scared, they just want me to go away. They get so upset. Who's Sarah? I asked her. That's what I want to know. I looked up at the house. It looked so serene from outside. Whatever I felt in there, Megan said, it's totally evil. Like bad, evil Alexis. She exhaled and started the car. As we drove down Whitley Street away from the house, her face seemed to at least soften a little bit. Where could we possibly go after that? We're going to the library, she said. I nodded. I nodded and leaned back in my seat. But as we neared the stop sign on the corner, something caught my eye. In the rearview mirror, I could see her neighbor Mary guiding her gigantic grandma car into her driveway. Stop here, I said, undoing my seatbelt. Park right here around the corner and wait for me. Before Megan could even ask where I was going, I was already out the door and cutting across the neighbor's yards to Mary's house. I reached her as she was hoisting her trunk open. I gave her a bit of a scare, which made me nervous because she's so old. Good heavens, she said, looking at me. Alexis, are you all right? Yes, fine, I lied. Yes, fine, I lied. It's not your father, is it? She asked. No, nothing like that. I glanced at her trunk full of grocery bags. Do you want some help with these? I asked, nodding toward them. Well, no, you're all out of breath, she protested, but I knew she didn't mean it. I scooped 3 bags into my arms. Mary grabbed the small brown sack with the eggs in it and started up the front walk. How on earth did she ever manage to get all of her own groceries inside? She must have had to make a separate trip for every single bag. Up until a couple of years ago, I went to her house a few times a week and had lemonade and cookies when she asked me all about school and friends and life. She never ate any of the cookies, but she always had plenty around. They must have just been for me and for Casey, and when I dragged her along. When was the last time I'd been there? I thought a whole package of cookies going stale was waiting for us. I thought of a whole package of cookies going stale waiting for us to come visit. It took 2 trips to get all the groceries inside. Mary pulled a chair from the kitchen table for me. Would you like some lemonade? Oh, shit. I need to get my charger going, or else my battery is going to die on me. Okay. Yeah. Up until... Wait, no. It took 2 trips to get all of the groceries inside. Mary pulled a chair from the kitchen table for me. Would you like some lemonade? She asked, making a move for the refrigerator. Actually, I can't stay long, I said. I just have a question. Oh, that's too bad, she said. She let the fridge door slip shut and turned to me. What's your question? You've lived here a long time, haven't you? I asked, even though I knew she had. Alvin and I moved here in 1972, she said. Alvin was her husband. He died before we moved in, and I'd heard plenty about him over the years. Did you ever hear about anything weird happening in my house? Mary froze. Aha. Then she shook her head. Maybe you'd better run along, she said, very suddenly, she said, Ghost house! Yep. Yeah. Maybe you'd better run along, she said, suddenly very interested in the contents of one of the grocery bags. What was it, Mary? Now she looked right at me. Perhaps when you're a little older, she said, but I don't feel right telling you now. Not when your father, not when you've got so much stress already. I wasn't leaving that kitchen without names, dates, details. Everything she knew, I was going to know. I crossed my arms and looked back up at her. I won't tell my parents you told me, if that's what you're worried about. She stared at the floor. I kept my eyes on her. The sunshine coming through the window silhouetted her puff of silvery curls. I need to know, I said simply. She turned away, but I knew I was breaking her down. Who's Sarah? Sarah? She asked, spinning back, her eyebrows forming a deep V on her forehead. I don't know anything about a Sarah. Do you mean... She abruptly cut herself off. Mary, please, it's so important. No, Alexis, I just don't... Oh, for heaven's sakes. Let's see. They moved in at the end... let's see. They moved in at the end of the summer, 1995. Who? Mary paced and fidgeted for a moment, wiggled her fingers, stared out the window. I don't remember. A lie. We both sighed at the same time. Can't you just give me a hint? No, I can't say anymore. Tell me. Just tell me. Did someone get hurt? I guess so. She stared helplessly at the ceiling, gripping the cross that hung from a chain around her neck. I don't know if I would say hurt, but she did die. I fell limply against the back of the chair. In the house? Goodness, she said. This was a mistake. Wait. Someone died in my house? She sighed like she knew it was late. She sighed like she knew it was too late to stop now. Yes, in your house. Of natural causes? No, dear, she said. What year? Let's see. It was 1996, October. The middle of October. So, okay, wait. Nobody lived there until we moved in? A murder most foul. So, okay, wait. Nobody lived there until we moved in? No. An older couple moved in for a year, but they moved out very quickly. They didn't seem to like the neighborhood. What was their name? Oh, good heavens, I'm terrible with names. She frowned in concentration, the corner of her eyes and lips turning downward. Sawamura, Walter and Joanne. They were Japanese. not very outgoing. And then, it was vacant until my family moved in? Vacant? Yes, she repeated. Holy cow. I leaned back in my chair. Are you sure I can't get you some lemonade? She asked. Then I remembered that Megan was waiting for me. October 1996, I said, jumping out of my seat. Oh, Alexis, I hope you won't think about it too much. It was just awful. We hate to talk about it. Well, obviously. Thanks, Mary, he said. You've been a big help. She nodded vaguely. Just try to relax and get some rest. I know you're worried about your father. I'll come by soon for some lemonade, I told her, my hand on the doorknob. Mary stood inside, then nodded. She looked tired. You do that, dear, she said, and then I was gone. And that is the end of that chapter. I could potentially do another chapter. I think I can do it. But then in 30 minutes me and Josh were gonna watch some Quora. But okay, I'll read this one because it is like, because I was reading ahead. But okay, let's go. So yes, the next chapter we're going to read is chapter 20. I knew it, Megan said for like the 10th time. I knew it. If it wasn't natural causes, that means it was murder. No wonder the house is so... We were talking across the public library's parking lot, and yeah, we were walking across the public library's parking lot, and she was all worked up. She'd been talking nonstop since I got back into the car. Let's find out some more details, I said. She could be wrong. That's not the kind of thing you just forget, Meg. You just forget, Megan said. I'm surprised you haven't heard about it until now. Most of our neighbors have moved, I said. I don't blame them. But what about what happened to you? What about the story in my dream? She stopped just short of the stairs outside. Maybe those were just a manifestation. Like how if you have a stressful day, it gives you weird dreams. The ghost's anger could be coming out as this bizarre fairy tale. How do you know all this stuff? She shrugged. I read a lot. I don't know, I said. It felt so real. She held the door open for me. The smell washed over me. Cold air, old books, floor wax, the scents of my childhood afternoons. The head librarian, Miss Oliver, shot us a stern look over the top of her pearly pink reading glasses. Where do we start? Megan asked. Where do we start? Megan asked in a low whisper. The paranormal books are in special collections behind the checkout desk. I think we need to check the newspaper archives, I whispered back. The online archives only go back to 1999, Megan said. We'll have to use the microfiche. The what? Oh, I said. The microfiche. It's pronounced microfiche. The microfiche. It's pronounced microfiche, but I can see why she would say it that way. She pointed. They're in the back corner. We found the ancient machines gathering dust behind the biographies. I switched one on, and its screen lit up with a lazy yawn. Next to the machines were row after row of shoebox-sized metal drawers. which held the slides of information. Which held the slides of information. Megan grabbed a 3-ring binder labeled microfiche log from the top of the cabinet and started flipping through it. Drawer 5E, she pronounced. I pulled open the drawer to see hundreds, maybe thousands of sheets of celluloid film, each containing a 6 by 10 grid of all articles, no bigger than a fingernail. Four dividers broke the drawer into sections. The second one said Surrey Denison Sentinel, October 1996. Megan flipped to the center of the October sheets and pulled one out. It doesn't get any more specific than this, she said. I've been looking for articles that mention my mom's accident for about 2 years. And you haven't found anything? She wrinkled her nose. Grandma won't talk about it, and Mom's headstone only says the year, so I had to start in January and go from there. She sighed. I'm up to April and I haven't found a thing. I thought of my own mother and felt a little nervous shudder run through me. I also couldn't help but be impressed by how well adjusted Megan was about the whole thing. But then I couldn't help but wonder if I'd have cut her a little more slack all this time if I'd known she'd had such a hard life. Megan pointed at the screen. Start looking. I set the slide in the metal tray and slid the whole thing into a slot on the side of the machine. A newspaper article showed up on the screen in negative yellow-white print on a black background. I tried to move to the next article, but the images spun by dizzyingly. Finally, I found one with a date on it, October 4th. Wrong date, I said. We're looking for the middle of the month. Megan switched the slides. The date on the new one was October 18th. I began scrolling through the articles one at a time. Megan leaned in to look at the first few, but the screen was really only big enough for one person. She backed away and continued flipping through the drawer. My eyes were already tired of searching the tiny print. I was approaching the last square on the page and starting to doubt, I was approaching the last square on the page and starting to doubt that we'd ever find anything. Then I saw the headline. Young mother's death ruled suicide. Local residents were shocked by the October 15 death of Surrey resident Shara Wiley. Now they have even more reason to be dismayed as the coroner's report categorizes the death as a suicide and possible murder attempt on Wiley's 2-year-old daughter, who, after presumably escaping out of the back door of the house, was found wandering on Whitley Street by neighbors. Shara Wiley, Megan's mom. Oh yeah, it's getting intense. I leaned in again, my heart beating so hard I could barely sit still enough to read the tiny print. That's fucked if true. I guess we'll have to find out. Yeah, I leaned in again, my heart beating so hard I could barely sit still enough to read the tiny print. Wiley was found deceased in her home at 989 Whitley Street after neighbors called the police to report having found the 2-year-old but not being able to reach her mother. All doors and windows had been sealed off, and a gas pipe in the house had been disconnected. Wiley died of asphyxiation and exposure to toxic fumes. Police initially considered the possibility of foul play, but after continuing investigations, the death has been ruled a suicide. Wiley, 27, bought the historic house in 1995 and lived there with her daughter. She worked part-time at a grocery She worked part-time as a grocery clerk, but had recently begun pursuing professional photography following years of award-winning amateur work, including the grand prize in Western Enchantment magazine's annual photography contest. A 1987 graduate of Surrey High, Wiley returned to her hometown following a 7-year residence in San Francisco. The coroner declared Wiley dead at the scene. She was unmarried. Her daughter was turned over to the custody of relatives who refused to speak to reporters. As of press time, uh, police investigations continue. Alexis? I turned to it. I jerked her attention and looked at Megan. What is it? She asked, trying to edge around behind me. I blocked her path with my chair. Wait, I said. Maybe we should... Can we print it out? Do you have a quarter? I don't think I do. My clammy hands groped in my pockets for change, but they were empty. I could tell that Megan wanted to push me out of the way and read what was on the screen. But then our eyes met. She nodded slowly and fished a quarter out of her bag, then stuck it in the coin slot. My fingers fumbled as I pressed the big green print button. The ancient gears inside whined and groaned, and then a page shot out of the side with the article printed on its shiny black ink. With the article printed on in shiny black ink. We both reached for it, but Megan was faster. She started scanning the words. I tried to think of something to say that might soften the blow, but of course there was nothing. Huh? She said, and kept reading. I couldn't look away from her. It felt like my duty, my responsibility. Soon I heard her catch breath in her throat. Soon I heard her breath catch in her throat. She pulled the page to her chest, crinkling it against her heart. She looked at me, eyes intense and searching, like a hurt, confused animal. I took a step toward her, but she held her arm out to keep me away. She leaned up against the row of metal cabinets and finished reading the article. Then her fingers released it and then floated to the floor. And it floated to the floor. My mother tried to kill me, she whispered. Her eyes were unfocused, like she was seeing a progression of possibilities, answers. Megan, all those psychics, they were saying Sarah. They weren't saying Sarah. They were saying Shara. I'm so stupid. All these years I've been hearing it wrong, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. Grandma told me she died in a car accident. Why didn't she tell me the truth? I don't know, I said. I'm sorry. We have to go back to your house. Her whole face seemed hardened. I want to talk to her. I want to ask her why. A second passed. My heart thumped so hard it hurt. It's dangerous, I said. Megan, remember what you said in the car? It's evil. If my sister is possessed, I continued, if there's something in the house that wants you dead, and Casey was home when we got there? Megan lifted her chin and leveled her gaze on me. My body seemed to vibrate with a striking new fear that Megan would do something stupid and get herself killed. I don't care, she said. I'm not afraid. She could really kill you. Was that what all of this was about? Megan's mother's ghost trying to finish what she started? She made a noise of protest. more of a whimper than an actual word. But I knew exactly what she couldn't say. She she had to at least try. Wouldn't anyone... Yeah, let me say that again. She made a noise of protest, more of a whimper than an actual word. But I knew exactly what she couldn't say. She had to at least try. Wouldn't anyone feel that way? Wouldn't I? I would. But still. You can't go back until we know more. You can't go back until we know more, I said, trying to steady my shaking voice. Maybe she's changed, Megan said. Maybe she's angry because she's stuck in the house and she wants to talk to me. No, I said. She shook her head like she hadn't heard me right. No? No, not today. Maybe tomorrow. What? She said, her voice edged with hurt. Like you're going to stop me. I will if I have to, I said. Alexis, she said. I thought we are friends, I said. That's why I can't let you do this. Just give it one day. We'll keep researching, keep looking for ways to do what? To destroy her? She needs help, not... She shook her head, looking for a word. I could imagine how much it would mean to her to know her mother. Yeah, I could imagine how much it would mean to her to know her mother. I felt her pain and loneliness as if they were my own, and my whole body ached with sadness for her. That's how I knew we were friends. I shook my head. You can't stop me. Her voice was low. I'll call your grandmother, I said, or I'll call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. She was silent. I'm not saying never, I said. Just not tonight. Not until we know more. We know plenty. We know plenty, she said. I could feel her anger. Yeah, I could feel her anger, as hot and raw as the tears streaming down the corners of her eyes. Don't you dare call my grandmother. I didn't even blink. I will, I said. She knew it. Her shoulders slumped and her head dropped, her hair falling forward in front of her face. As she turned to leave, I heard a ragged sob escape from her mouth. Yeah, as she turned to leave, I heard a ragged sob escape from her mouth. Megan, I said, but she had started weaving through the bookshelves toward the front door. As I followed her, a million thoughts raced through my head. I shouldn't have told her. I should have kept it hidden. She was in terrible danger. She was already climbing into her car when I caught up to her. I grabbed the door before she could... I grabbed the door before she could slam it. Go straight home, or go to Pepper's. Don't go to my house. I felt a desperate surge of fear. Megan, please, you can't. She was sobbing silently, her shoulders trembling, her face soaked with tears. I know, she said, leaning forward and resting on her steering wheel. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry. She turned to look up at me. Her eyes shone in the fading sunlight, and a quivering breath shook her whole body. Why? She cried. Why does she have to be bad? I put my hand on her shoulder. I can't help you anymore, Alexis. I have to go. she said, shrugging my hand away. I jumped back as she slammed the door. The car screeched out of the parking lot and sped out to the road. Megan wouldn't go to my house. I knew it. She was safe, but I was on my own. And that is the end of that chapter. It's getting intense. Getting intense. But yes, I will see you in the next video. Thank you and goodbye.